I'm sorry I can't stay, Fred. There's,
You've taken the work I was going to say.
The work you've done on this is brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Fred Grindrod, member of the City Council, will be talking to us on economy and skills.
Thank you, Colin.
Right, thank you so much. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
So I'm Councillor Fred Grindrod. I'm the councillor for Bourneville and Cotteridge Ward. I was recently elected in the May local elections. I think one of our colleagues was. We had a couple of debates on the campaign trail. So I was on the city's Brexit Commission for its later meetings. I bring apologies from Councillor Bridget Jones, my deputy leader, who would have been here and given this talk, but she's unable to make it today. So, I mean, the first thing is to thank Collins for inviting me and indeed for Bridget to come and speak on this. I think Jack's just basically taken all my talk. So I'm kind of like, okay, what do I say that's different to Jack? So I just thought maybe I'll give a bit of history about myself, about where we've come to on the Brexit report, and then maybe put some points and some contributions forward from there, if that's okay. Yeah. So thank you. So my kind of background, I work for a trade union. I'm not representing that trade union today, so I won't mention which one it is. But I worked for the TUC for 5 years, from 2009 to 2014. I was the TUC's representative on the ETUC's Lifelong Learning Committee and the European Commission's Advisory Commission for Vocational Training. So I've had quite a bit of experience as a trade unionist within European structures. I started my career, about 20 years ago now at Ford Motor Company, where I was a member of MSF and then Amicus, and I learnt from some amazing trade unionists who mentored me and supported me in becoming a trade union at Ford. Interestingly, I was in the IT department at Ford. I was only one of that intake that joined the trade union, which kind of again showed the challenges we face in terms of as trade unions, how we recruit, how we organise within even organisations like Ford today. I learned a great deal from mentors, and I was enabled by Amicus and then Unite to do some amazing things as a trade unionist, spend time with the United Steelworkers in America, be chair of the Amicus National Youth Committee, and be a rep in several workplaces since moving from industry into policy and the third sector in terms of doing that kind of work. So that's my kind of background, colleagues, so you know where I'm coming from. So I was elected as a councillor in May for the Bourneville and Cotteridge Ward, which is an interesting thing given what Jack said about what people are saying on the doorsteps in King's Standing. People are saying something very different on the doorsteps in Bourneville, which is very much a very anti-Brexit message and very, very concerned about that. We have significant people that work in the university, we have significant people that work in the city centre in some of our finance sector and issues like and areas like that, and they're very, very concerned about Brexit and would and do call on me to support a reconsideration about whether Brexit should happen. So with that background, so we produced this as a council, the impact of Brexit on Birmingham and the West Midlands. It was, I think David, who was one of the latest speakers, was also, his department at BCU, the Department for Brexit Studies, was also involved. But we gathered some of the best academics in the West Midlands, in our major universities in Birmingham, but also obviously wider universities in the West Midlands Combined Authority, to set out and look at what we thought would happen on the various scenarios that Brexit could lead to. Obviously a very close relationship, as the Norway Plus model, all the way through to the Canada Plus model, which is probably around where Theresa May's deal is, through to a no-deal Brexit, and looked at the impact of what that would do on Birmingham and the West Midlands. So I have a bit of a note from colleagues. So some key points, summaries from this point. This region is more export-oriented than other parts of the country. Some 40% of the regional merchandise exports are to EU destinations. Jack's told us about the automotive sector being particularly concerned for the region, given that only 40% of components are sourced locally, making it vulnerable to supply interruptions and delays. I don't know if colleagues read the report done by the Imperial College London for the Department of Transport on the checks at Dover and what the impact of the checks at Dover are. Has anybody read that report? David might have done, but basically they were asked to do a study for the government on how long we could do a check at Dover. Remember Dominic Raab, the former Tory Brexit Secretary? He didn't know how important Dover was. Well, I think everybody now knows how important Dover is. Right, so they did this test. They said, okay, how many seconds have we got to check a lorry? And the answer was, we've got 45 seconds, right? If you go 5 seconds over 45 seconds, it becomes an exponential problem. So a delay of 5 seconds leads to a 6-day queue on the motorways. Right. If it's a delay of 70 seconds, that means Britain comes to a gridlock. And that is what will happen in a no-deal situation. And that's some of the best kind of transport planners in the country have done that report for government and set that out. That will massively impact our economy here in the West Midlands. So it is essential, we as a city, and a city and a region, we're bigger as an economy, and we often fail to point this out, than several European states and European member states. And yet we have had no contribution whatsoever, other through the diligent work of our MPs like Jack, into how the government is responding to Brexit. We've attempted to talk, asked for meetings with the Department for Brexit, with the Prime Minister, to talk about the impact on Birmingham and the West Midlands, and even wider kind of links with some of the other cities, and we've been denied them. Ian Ward, the council leader, was able to get a meeting with Barnier and Guy Verhofstadt at one point, but that meeting was very useful and recognised the issues for the UK in terms of our cities, but on the UK side, nothing. So it's essential that this report really sets out why that's essential. There's another thing, we talk about EU funding streams, and a lot of people kind of say, well, that's our money coming back. But does anyone here really believe that a Conservative government would take that money that goes to the EU and ends up in EU funding streams and put it towards deprived areas in this country? Do you really believe that? I don't believe that. I've lived in Swansea, I've lived in Southend, I've seen how the impact on major deprived, what they call category, Area 1 EU areas, and the improvements that EU funding has led to. And I know that if Tory governments would not have enabled that to happen if they were in control of those purse strings. And so being part of the EU and being part of the structural and innovation funding, social and infrastructure funding, has made a difference, and it's made a massive difference to Birmingham. It made a massive difference to Jaguar, to Rover, when Rover, that was that money, and it's money that certainly a Tory government would not allow to happen. It's also a massive loss to our universities. We have 5 universities now in the city, and those cities strongly rely on EU programmes, including the Erasmus Plus programme that Jack mentioned, but also programmes like Horizon 2020. No deal means we're not participating in any of those. Theresa May's deal means it's very unlikely that we'll participate in all of them, but again, it'll be a cherry picking for those that have, and not for students who don't, and universities that don't. We've called, as a city, as part of the core cities of the UK, we've called for more information about the replacement funding that the UK government has said it will come up with to support the transition from ESIF funding and other funding streams, and no information even now is coming forward as to what that looks like, how much it will be. But one thing we can be guaranteeing, it will be a lot less than what we got there. So, a couple of other points. 40% of our exports go to the EU, and 8 of our top 10 trading partners are EU countries. West Coast Main Line, ICC, Town Hall, Nishcam Centre, many other projects across Birmingham have been helped by over 1 billion of EU funding. Thousands of young people have been helped into work by an EU-funded initiative, and 240 million has come into the universities in recent years. And we've had over 220 million in EU funding since 2014, and those are propping up significant social activity in this city, and we have no plans at the moment from government at all about what's going to replace them when those programmes come to an end in 2020. That means young people losing those kind of access to work schemes, opportunities to study schemes, and indeed significant other programmes that are propped up by that, including some of the areas that I worked on in terms of apprenticeships and vocational education, which is pretty much entirely funded through some of those ESF schemes. So the government's own analysis shows that the economy in the West Midlands will suffer massive damage as a result of Brexit and shrink by 8% in a situation like Theresa May's deal. So that's the government's own analysis, 8%. 2 to 4% if we were to go to a Norway Plus model, and 10+% if we were to clash out with no deal, maybe as far as 13%. You know, that is significant, colleagues, and that is something that we must do everything to as Jack said, to stop. So, you know, we will be hit harder than pretty much every other part of the UK. Parts of South Wales, the North East, might take it worse than us, but we will be up there. And indeed, because of our reliance on automotive and aerospace manufacturing, that could put us in a worse situation than them. So that's some facts. And I thought I'd just take some other points, if that's okay, Chair. So, one thing I did learn from being the TUC's representative on the ACBT was that we have many, many colleagues fighting to remain and reform in the European Union, across trade unions, across Europe. I was speaking recently to a good colleague of mine who's a teacher trade union in Germany. He taught here for a short while, and he really does not understand why we could even countenance Brexit. Because although he's working in Germany, he understands some of the criticisms that have been raised in the room already. The fundamental challenge he has back to us is by participating together, we can work, and you know, trade unions are achieving significant things within the EU and its structures, and also, except for a perpetual Labour government, which colleagues all around the table, I'm sure, you know, would be our desire. Whenever we get a Tory government, we have a capitalist club here in this country, and if we, you know, unless that threat to us is so significant, it will never give us the kind of rights and protections that we currently enjoy because of the solidarity of the trade union movement across Europe. That, you know, those rights will be undermined very, very quickly. You know, there is a real, and I think Jack's absolutely right, talking to other trade unionists across Europe, there is a real disappointment that we're going, and a real view that, you know, this isn't a move for progressive public focus values. We know that the dangers of no deal, Jack's already said that out, but also, colleagues, let's just reflect on the waste of public money that's currently being used, that has to be used to prep us for that situation. But wouldn't it be so much better to have spent that money investing in public services and rebuilding our economy from the disastrous austerity that the Tory government are inflicting on us? We know that the Brexit is being led by Jacob Rees-Mogg and others. You know, one of the things that shocked me was Christian O'Day. Has anyone heard of Christian O'Day? He was the guy that funded the Vote Leave campaign. He made £500 million on Brexit Day by the decline of the pound. Now, to me, that doesn't sound like, you know, a positive socialist future if people like that are in charge. I'm sorry, guys, I really would challenge anybody on that one. You know, Christian O'Day, Jacob Rees-Mogg, the dark money that's funding them was, you know, the stuff we continue to learn about Facebook and all the kind of things that happen clearly suggests that our democracy, you know, has been tainted massively by that referendum. And how do any of us that trust in, you know, in our democracy feel confident that the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg and his ilk won't massively hide the spending they spend in any election going forward? So to really trust absolutely that the referendum said what it said, and we shouldn't kind of continue to consider whether this is the right thing to do, is, you know, for me, is disappointing. There is massive profiteering going on around hard Brexit. We know that. We know that the American companies are desperate for us to effectively go to no deal because they want to play us off against the EU. And the thing they want to do is they want to keep us begging and begging and begging for their trade deal that will compensate us in a no deal scenario. I mean, I don't know, you know, there's been some really good articles from academics on this, but basically saying we will desperately need that deal with Trump's government eventually if we end up in a no deal situation, or even if we end up in a May deal situation. And a Tory government will concede everything to those American negotiators. Absolutely everything. And if we think that our NHS is safe in a Brexit situation, I think we have a real shock coming. Because the American predators will be on us the day after immediately, banging on our deals, looking to asset strip us. It's already happening with a lot of other companies, a lot of our R&D in this country. We're seeing companies, Chinese companies, American companies, coming in, buying up the company, leaving it quietly, asset stripping the R&D, taking it away, and then they'll close the plant down and the jobs will be gone. And if that is a positive vision of Lexit, I disagree completely. So, respecting the referendum, okay, we did vote. This city voted 50.4% for Brexit, 49.6% to remain. Hope Not Hate, which is an organisation I fundamentally trust, I know colleagues probably around the room do a lot of work with them, have done some polling and show that actually Birmingham probably has significantly changed. It's one of those areas where we do see what constituencies like Perry Bar, Yardley and Hodge Hill that have, the evidence seems to suggest they've changed their minds, whereas my constituency that I'm in, Selly Oak, Kings Heath, not Kings Heath, Hall Green, and Edgbaston have kind of become more entrenched in their view to reject Brexit, according to Hope Not Hate polling. So there is a sense that people aren't happy with Theresa May's deal, and they certainly aren't happy with no deal. If we can get a Labour government, and that's what we should absolutely be aiming for, colleagues, that can negotiate a Norway Plus model, and that is what Labour is looking to deliver, a close alignment with the single market and a customs union. Remember, colleagues, what about a customs union? A customs union means that organisations that want to do trade can do trade in the whole customs union area. So if we get a trade deal with Japan, and they would be able to do deals, do business in the customs union, including us. But because we're not in the single market, we wouldn't be able to do, our businesses wouldn't be able to export through the same trade deal to Japan. So we'll need a separate deal with Japan as well as being a customs union. So we do need more than just a customs union. So if we got to that situation, then and Labour were able to achieve that, then yeah, there is a possible way forward for me. But given where we are and given some of the really disastrous stuff that's happened this week, it looks like this Conservative government is going to get itself over the line. And I think that we must do everything we can to challenge whether the people of Britain are content with Theresa May's deal, because that is what they're going to get. And once we get through that to a transition period, then the Tories are going to have even more of an attempt to undermine Theresa May's deal. And that will further, shred us of our environmental protections, of our workers' rights and the things that Jack laid out. And colleagues, I do think in that case, then we do need to say, is this something we want to do? And I believe that people will reject Theresa May's deal, will reject no deal. And I believe that whilst accepting a lot of the challenges made today, not all of them, the EU is a capitalist club, but then significant amounts of the UK are our parliamentary democracy is a capitalist club. Unless we have a permanent Labour government, and we're going to end up with periods of governments that will undermine our workers' rights. So let's get those workers' rights enshrined in international treaties, because it's far harder to unpick them from international treaties, such as the EU Social Chapter, than it is from a Tory government just passing legislation, as they did with the recent evil trade union, the Trade Union Act. Colleagues, we can have a vision of what a socialist country looks like, but it's a hard, hard fight to get there, and the money is against us. And I believe that if we Brexit, then we're going to end up in a far harder place to get to. And I think that that's why we as trade unions should be continuing to challenge that. The priority is to get the Tories out. It is to get rid of austerity. It has done so much damage to our communities. But Brexit goes through that. And one thing I will be clear about, from my experience, is that my voters in Bourneville and Cottridge are very clear that Brexit is the #1 issue for them. It might not be for other parts of the city. And we need them as part of our coalition to get rid of the Tories. And if we don't have a positive message on either getting to a very close alignment, such as a Norway Plus model, or having a second referendum, they're not going to vote for us. And I think, and again, by default, because I'll probably go and vote for the Greens, we will lose seats that we do not need to, we cannot afford to lose in the next election. So yeah, I think we will decline the country further and be unable to rebuild society in the way we currently need to. And any Brexit will eventually be a permanent, hard, tough fight for rights and protections. And we need to be up to that challenge. And we need to recognise that we have put ourselves in that challenge by failing to stop this disastrous Brexit. One final thing, and I hope colleagues around here will dismiss this argument that some on the Brexit right would argue that if we don't Brexit, we'll end up with the far right rising. I think if we Brexit, we end up with the far right rising. Hope Not Hate's piece, again, which is really looked in that they are quite clear that the real movement of the far right comes from more disaffection, more unemployment, and more kind of sense of anger about what's happening in society, and the left not having good comprehensive answers to that, but Tory government's lying to people. And I think we should be absolutely prepared to take back to the people a question: do they want Theresa May's Brexit? Because I don't want it. Jack's made it clear that he doesn't want it. I don't believe that anyone in this room, no matter their view on the European Union, wants Theresa May's Brexit. But that is the deal on the table. And if you think it's going to be easy to unpick that and build any other form of Brexit, I really think we've got a challenge and a half coming. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. In order to save time, can we now go on